In the country of Georgia, archaeologists found a skull that is 1.77 million years old. It belonged to an early human, and there are almost no teeth in it, not knocked out in a fight, lost, and the empty sockets had fully healed over years before he died, which means that for the last years of his life, this man could not chew at all, and he lived anyway. Somebody made sure of it. That is the oldest evidence we have of being old. Now, you've probably heard that ancient people died at 30. That's the number everybody repeats. And technically it's true. Average life expectancy really was somewhere around 30 for most of prehistory. But averages lie. And this one lies harder than almost any other statistic in history, because roughly a third of all babies died before their first birthday. Perhaps half never reached 15. Drop that many very small numbers into any average, and the average collapses. Here's what actually happened. If you survived childhood, if you made it to about 20, your realistic odds were another 40 years, 60, 70, grey hair, bad knees, grandchildren. Old people weren't rare in the ancient world. They were just very, very hard to become. But they weren't always there. And this is the part that reframed the entire topic for me. Anthropologist Rachel Kaspari counted older adults against younger adults in fossil teeth across hundreds of thousands of years. For most of human existence, that ratio is low. Almost nobody made it to grandparent age. And then around 30,000 years ago, in the Upper Paleolithic, it jumps. Not slightly. The number of adults surviving into old age roughly quadruples, which lines up almost exactly with the moment human culture explodes. Cave painting, complex tools, jewelry, burial ritual. That is probably not a coincidence. Something changed once people started having grandparents. There's a name for the leading explanation. It's called the grandmother hypothesis. Human women are genuinely strange among mammals. We stop reproducing decades before we die. From a cold evolutionary point of view, that shouldn't happen. A body that can't reproduce should be pruned away, unless it's doing something else. And among the Hadza in Tanzania, anthropologists watched exactly what. The older women outforage nearly everyone. They dig tubers, they gather, they feed their grandchildren, which frees their daughters to have the next baby sooner. And more of those children survive. So the grandmother isn't a passenger being carried. She is the reason the group grows at all. And that's only food. The bigger thing an old person carried around was memory. Think about what a band of 30 people desperately needs and does not have. No writing, no maps, no records of any kind for almost the entire human story. So where's the spring that only runs during a drought that happens twice in a century? Which plant stops a wound bleeding? And which nearly identical plant will kill you before morning? All of it lives in somebody's head. And it is almost always the oldest head in the group. In Australia, Aboriginal oral traditions describe coastlines that no living person has ever seen. Geologists checked. Those coastlines are real. They drowned when the sea rose around 10,000 years ago. That memory was carried out loud, mouth to ear, for roughly 400 generations. That's what an elder actually is, in a world without books. Not a burden, a library. And you do not abandon your only library because it walks slowly. So back to the bones. In France, at La Chapelle-aux-Saints, there's a Neanderthal known simply as the Old Man. Severe arthritis through his spine and hip, and he'd lost most of his teeth long before he died. Same story as the Georgian skull, separated by almost the entire span of human history. Someone processed his food, softened it, possibly chewed it first. That is not a small thing to do for somebody every day for years. And in the Shanidar caves in Iraq, a man who was half-blind, one-armed, and elderly, when he died. He was injured young and lived for decades afterward, in a Neanderthal group, 45,000 years ago. When bioarchaeologists go looking for cases like this, they don't find a few, they find them constantly. Which brings us to the story you've been waiting for. The old man on the ice floe. Everybody knows this one. The Inuit elder, pushed out to sea, left to drift away and die. It's in films. It's in novels. It's easily the most repeated image of how ancient people treated the old. And it is, essentially, a myth. Not completely invented, but wildly, badly distorted. Arctic peoples did have accounts of death during famine. What they did not have was a routine, casual custom of it. It was catastrophic. It was rare. It was discussed the way we discuss lifeboats, not the way we discuss chores. And the version that reached the West came mostly through outsiders who barely understood what they were writing down. But I promised honest. So here's the flaw. It did happen. Occasionally, genuinely, it happened. In the worst winters, on migrations that could not be slowed down, when the alternative was losing everyone. And in a striking number of those accounts, the decision was not made by the group. It was made by the person themselves. They asked. They stayed. Sometimes they insisted, which reframes it completely. Not disposal. A choice made under conditions no one should ever have to face. So what did ancient humans do when somebody got too old to walk? Overwhelmingly, they carried them, not out of sentiment. Because the slowest person in the group was very often the most valuable one in it. You never got too old to be useful. You got old enough to be the only one who still remembered.